Dear brother Nasir, make a promise. We won't let you run away from the country. That's the only way I will leave this podium.
I promise, even on a part-time basis.
Promise, even on a part-time basis. So this was El-Rufai during the 2023 campaign with Tinubu. And as most of you know, he was one of Tinubu's staunchest um, campaigner throughout the 2023 election. El-Rufai, I mean. So, but today, there've been reports of threat and of arrest by the Nigerian government or the NSA, as reported by major outlets today. So, Sahara Report is reporting that, as announced by El-Rufai on his Twitter handle, that they've been plotting to arrest him. I'll read through those. I'll give no. Yeah, sorry. I'll read through the. I will read through the newspaper, and I'll put some comments as we read through as well. Okay. So El-Rufai said, I've received threats of arrest from those plotting. I go on exile, but I'm returning to Nigeria February 20th. El-Rufai says. So it says Sahara Report is reporting that he accused certain individuals of using intimidation tactics through his friends, family, and associates to force him into exile. And he says, I would not, he declared. So basically, El-Rufai is saying that there have been threats coming at him for a while to leave Nigeria. Obviously, I think this is coming as part of his recent criticism of the Tinubu administration and where the government has led to so far. But I mean, if you ask the people from Kaduna, they don't think that El-Rufai is a good reporter or conveyor of messages like this anyway. But let's carry on. Former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai has said he has received multiple threats from several quarters aimed at forcing him into self-imposed exile, but he remains undeterred. The former governor vowed to return to Nigeria on the 20th of February. El-Rufai, in an ex post while responding to a political analyst Imran, dismissed claims of his imminent arrest, detention, or torture, calling them persistent rumors since July 2024, when the Kaduna House of Assembly's report began circulating. They freaked out when we challenged the legality of the premeditated defamation and went to every length to compromise the judicial process. And this is continuing at the Court of Appeal, he said. For Nigeria to work, our judiciary has to work. It does not matter what we fight today. Politicians have used the judiciary to steal elections for so long. And the politicians who have stolen from the national coffers or the state coffers have used the judiciary to cover them up. Where cases have been dismissed, court cases missing, document missing, or they're getting burnt up. How courts were burnt down because of documents. So our judicial system plays a key role in advancing the new Nigeria we want. So he says here, he accused certain individuals of using intimidation tactics through his friends, family, and associates to force him into exile. And he says, I will not, he declared. El-Rufai said to Imran, your post below refers, I have been hearing these same rumors of arrest, detention, and torture in some dungeon in the NSA's office, where Emefiele was allegedly tortured to resign as governor, CBN governor, since July 2024 when the so-called report of the Kaduna Assembly began circulating. So El-Rufai is saying this thing didn't start today. It started since 2024 when the Kaduna House of Assembly produced a report about his financial mismanagement. If you remember, that was that time when I think it was then when that report came about roads contract allocated for roads that were never done and monies that were taken even before the house gave approval for that to be taken or borrowed or whatever the case is. So that's what El-Rufai is saying, that this is what is actually suggesting that some people have been using that to intimidate him to run out of the country. But I think it is now getting so intensified, considering the fact that recently there was that gathering where we had El-Rufai and the comments that he made, where you had Atiku Abubakar and supposed stakeholders who were concerned about democracy. You understand? I say supposedly concerned about democracy because they ruined the country anyway, and they're staying their stakeholders right now trying to fix the country that they destroyed. And we cannot leave it to them. But he's saying something there that is more important for you to remember. And El-Rufai is saying that I have been hearing these same rumors of arrest, detention, and torture in the dungeon in the NSA's office. So he's saying there's in that NSA's office, there is a dungeon in there. And he says that's where Emefiele was allegedly tortured to resign as CBN governor. Because remember, by constitution, the CBN governor has to resign if it's not the end of his term. And the president don't have any power to fire him. So what they had to do is to force him. So what El-Rufai is alleging here is that for Emefiele to resign as CBN governor, he was tortured in the NSA's office. Now, for Emefiele, it's still a whole lot. So Nigerians will say they don't care. But injustice to one person is injustice to all of us. You understand? Corruption affects every one of us in total. So tomorrow it might be you that will just, round up for just criticizing the government. So and then you will be in that NSA's office too. It says they freaked out when we challenged the legality of the premeditated defamation. I went to every length to compromise the judicial process, and this is continuing in the appeal court. They have sent such similar messages of intimidation and threat through many of my friends, family, and political associates because they want me to resign on self-imposed exile. He says, I will not. He says, I have now put all my previous academic and language learning plans on hold, and I will spend more time in Nigeria than ever before. Silence is no longer an action. Inaction has never been an option. The arrest, detention, and torture of perceived political enemies are nothing new in human affairs. I have been arrested and detained thrice in the past for expressing my views of previous government. Listen, there's a whole lot in this last statement to unpack. The first one says, well, silence is no longer an option. I'm saying to you all Nigerians and every one of you listening to this podcast today, silence is not an option. So if you're meeting this content for the first time, please, I would say like, share, subscribe. But above all, put your comment down below as well. But remember, it's not time for us to be silent anymore. If we want the Nigeria that we want to see and the changes that we want to have, silence is not an option anymore. So he says here, silence is no longer an option. And he says inaction has never been an option. You see the way the Nigerian politicians think. For them to have their say, they understand something. They cannot be dumb. They cannot be passive. They understand they cannot be passive. And you and I should not be passive anymore. We've been so passive and lukewarm for so long where we've kept quiet, we've been saintly, and they've plundered our nation. And now there's nothing for you, there's nothing for your children, and there will be nothing for your grandchildren if you don't step up now. So he says silence is no longer an option. Silence is no longer an option, and inaction has never been an option. Inaction has never been an option. Do not think that your idea of not voting when it comes to 2027 will not have ramification. There is ramification. So because if you don't vote, you say to them, steal my vote anyway. So but when you come out to vote, comes 2027, you're trying to put in the right people in there. When you start to lend out your voice and call out judges who are corrupt, who have enabled these corrupt politicians, you start to make changes. This is why this content is out. So this is below here. It says there's always mourning after the arrest or detention or torture, and political and life continues. As for death, it's when it says Allah destines it, and it's ultimate, and it is ultimate the death of every human being. For the attention of the pathetic characters that don't sleep well whenever I am in Nigeria, take notice. I intend to return in time for the launch of President IBB's memoirs. In okay. We depend on no one but God, Allah says. We fear no mortal but Almighty, Allah says. We always hope for the best but plan for the worst. So he's saying thank you to Wakili for your concern. But remember that we will always be. We say what will be will always be. But you have to also remember, this is the response he gave to Wakili when he says here, Bakili says, I was reliably informed that there is a plan to arrest, not invite, Mallam Nasir El-Rufai in if he comes back to Nigeria with another concocted allegations as usual. I am confident El-Rufai will return soon because he has nothing to hide and is not afraid of anyone. So that is El-Rufai for you. Okay. So, but whether or not he has anything to hide or being afraid of anyone is irrelevant here. What is relevant here to all of us Nigerians is this. It's the change that we want. Do you know how many Nigerians have been arrested for just criticizing a politician or maybe the government official? Do you have an idea how many? Do you have an idea of how many are not even accounted for yet? Just because they dare to speak up. Have you forgotten that boat driver that said to the House of Rep guy, please come get your item you ordered, I've delivered it. And he said, do you know who I am? I will make you disappear and nothing will happen. Have you forgotten that? So, but in this context here, the breaking news is that there's plan to arrest Mallam Nasir El-Rufai if he makes any of those unfounded allegations as he normally does when he's around. That's the allegation. That's what he's saying here. That's what this Twitter post is saying, and that's what El-Rufai is responding to. But what counts here is this. Our politicians don't understand that power is transient. One moment you're the governor of Kaduna, where you also terrorized opposition, where under your watch as the governor of Kaduna, insecurity was prevalent, and you did nothing about that. Christians were almost wiped out, but you did nothing about that. And then when it comes to a perception of you being arrested and you're saying you fear nothing, that's fine. But also remember that power is transient. And this is why you and I have to wake up and come to that full realization that until we speak up, nothing will change. Until we speak up, nothing will change. You cannot be quiet anymore. You cannot be passive anymore. This was Tinubu and El-Rufai, back then during the election period where they were canvassing for votes. This is Tinubu inviting El-Rufai to come up stage. This is it. But again, because he didn't get the ministerial nomination he wanted, because the Nigerian Senate would not pass him, obviously because of his records. And I guess there's been a falling out between Tinubu's camp and El-Rufai. And they cannot afford to have him criticizing the governor and the president because he's got a very big mouth and he's got very big following as well. So what they would do is to keep him quiet. But what we cannot afford anymore is being quiet as Nigerians. As Nigerians, we cannot afford to be quiet anymore. We cannot afford to be passive. We cannot afford to not lend our voices to help grow Nigeria. The stakes are very high. As Nigerians, the stakes are high. You have to understand that for you to have the kind of life as Nigerians that you want to have, you need to speak up, because silence is not an option. You've been silent for so many years. What has it resulted to? You've been silent for so many years. What have you gotten out of it? Isn't it time for you to wake up and say silence is no longer an option? Isn't it time for you to wake up and say my passive nature of not following and then contributing to what it would change to Nigeria tomorrow is no longer an option? Isn't it time for you to lend your voice? Isn't it time for you to lend your voice? Is it not time for you to say, enough is enough? Our politicians have destroyed our nation enough. Let's fight and take our country back. Let's make sure when we go to vote, we ensure that our votes are counted there and there and is recorded and uploaded. Silence is no longer an option. Inaction is not an option as well. Wake up. I dare say to you, Nigerians, when you keep quiet, your children will suffer it and your grandchildren will suffer it, whether you are home or in the diaspora. When you keep quiet, your hospitals will not work. When you keep quiet, your schools will not work. And at some point, your children will have no schools to go to. If you keep quiet, the insecurity that started in the north will go around the entire nation. Syria is an example. If you keep quiet, the politicians will steal from you again and again and again, and they will launder the money abroad, where they will run to and have some good time, and they will take their families and run away. There's always an option for them. We don't have an option. When you keep quiet, you will suffer the consequences, and your children and grandchildren too as well. But if we all rise up together and say enough is enough, time for change is what is now for us. When we all start to speak up in our homes, at our place of work, in our hospitals, in the boardrooms, when we start to demand the kind of change we want to see, they will have no other choice but to start to respond. But when you keep quiet, your quietness, your silence is an enabler for the corrupt politicians. Your silence is an enabler for the criminal politicians. Your silence is an enabler for the criminal judge who is being compromised and his judgment or our judgment is not forthright. Speak up. Let your friends and mothers and brothers and sisters know it is time for change. 2027 is too close. Don't think it's far away. It's too short for political calendar. 2027. The rulers of Nigeria did not wait until 2027. They started the next plan immediately they got into power. Why do you want to wait until 2027? Please join me and join every other person who's been lending their voices to make Nigeria better, or, for lack of a better catchphrase, make Nigeria great again. Join us. Join me by sharing this content. Join me by subscribing and liking this content so that when I release new content like this, you'll be the first to get notified. And then we can continue together. It's one day at a time. Advance the good of Nigeria so that your children and my children will have a better future. It is time for change. It is time for the change that we desire. Let us don't let this time pass us by. Change is now. If we don't do it, the status quo will continue, and we cannot afford it. I want to say thank you for always coming back and sharing this content and subscribing. And thank you for all the messages as well. On to the next one. Stay blessed. God bless you. Bye for now.